Did you know that 89% of the listeners of this podcast stay until the end of the episode? You want to find out why? Listen as we dig into our first quarter review here on the Engineer Your Success podcast. Find out what worked, what didn't, and what's coming next.
Success isn't just about what you achieve. It's about living a life that reflects your values and priorities. Welcome to Engineer Your Success, the podcast that helps you lead with intention and live fulfilled.
Welcome to the Engineer Your Success podcast, where we help you win at work and at home. I'm your host and the coach in your corner, Dr. James Bryant. Today, you and I are going to sit down and have a real conversation about the first quarter of 2026. That's right. We've just finished up this first quarter, and it's time to see where we stand on our wins. We're going to talk about what's been working here at Engineer Your Success, what we've been hearing from our community, and some of the upcoming changes to the weekly emails, and of course, an update on the book that I'm writing. So let's get into today's show. I want to start with what's been working. Now, I want to be upfront about something. I generally track downloads, and downloads are an indicator of how many people are listening to the show. But downloads alone, for me, are not really a key performance indicator. What I actually track is engagement, and I use a combination of downloads, email open rates, email response rates, and the relationships that I'm able to grow as a result of the show. So that combination tells me something that's very real in terms of being able to grow and sustain those relationships. So in terms of the numbers, because we're engineers, we're all about numbers. There were 1,100 downloads over the first quarter of this year. But that number is not really the number that I track. There's a number that actually has a little bit more meaning for me, and this is it. It's called retention, which tracks the impact of the listening for each episode. And in this case, 89% of the listens from the podcast were impactful plays. So that means that a listener stayed for at least 75% of the episode. In a world where people are skipping, swiping, and moving on in 30-second increments, 89% of the people that start an episode of Engineer Your Success stay for almost the whole thing. That is not a download stat, but that is a depth of relationship stat. And that is what really matters to me. So also beyond the numbers, I do schedule conversations with listeners. I send surveys to listeners as well as people that are subscribing to the emails. And so I get direct feedback on both of those. And there's been a few things that have been showing up consistently in what I'm hearing. The first one is the coach in your corner closing segment. For those of you who are newer to the show, at the end of every guest episode, as the conversation wraps up, I come back in and provide some additional insight on the topic that we covered. It lets me stay present and add value without taking the spotlight away from the guest. And beyond the episode itself, that segment gets pulled as a standalone video clip for social media. The second thing that's been coming up consistently in these conversations is that people are enjoying the mic flip segments. So every interview episode, at the end of the conversation, I say, now it is time for you to become the interviewer and for me to become the interviewee. What is one question that you have for me? And so some of the most honest, unscripted moments on the show have come from that segment over this past quarter. And actually, it's come up in multiple conversations that I'm talking to. I can be at a conference. I can be somewhere where there's a listener or someone that I'm connected to. And that is one of the segments that they are referencing in those conversations. And so they love the questions that are coming. In fact, I'm thinking of putting together a composite episode just of those questions and my answers across multiple guests. So we'll see where that goes. Stay tuned on that one. The third thing is the email series. So over the first quarter, I sent out a few different email series. One was on the DISC assessment and communication styles. Another focused on the ideal that engineers are people too, and the same issues and struggles that everyone else has, we have as well. And the last one I sent was built around the myth of work-life balance. Now, in each email, I ask for responses. I let the email subscribers know that I read every response. And so the responses that I have been getting, particularly this quarter, has been really overwhelming in a good way. So you're reading, you're responding, and you're sharing in the emails are working. So that's great. So now, listen, we talked about what's been working. I want to talk about what hasn't been working or what did not quite work out the way that I thought that it would. Right. And so I want to be honest with you. What didn't work is the Engineer Your Success Insiders, the private podcast. Now, maybe it hasn't been enough time and maybe there's still people that will sign up, but I thought that there would be a bigger appetite for that than it was. And so people weren't really gravitating toward that product. So I pivoted. And that actually was the impetus for designing the Coach in Your Corner segment of the main podcast, because I wanted to provide a little bit more of my voice. I thought that private podcast would be the place to provide my voice, but my voice has now found a home as part of the main podcast in that Coach in Your Corner segment. The insiders, it may not be going away forever. It that may come back as a community hub or some other type of product that we want to do. But for right now, the intent of that lives on in the main podcast. And here's a lesson, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, that I want you to walk away with here. And that is, over the years, I have learned to build tight plans, but to hold them loosely. So why hold them loosely? So that I can pivot when I need to pivot. And that's not really a failure, particularly if you are monitoring, you are learning, and you are adapting. You're continuing to find ways to engineer your success in that thing that you're working on. So if things didn't turn out the way that you wanted over the first quarter, don't lose heart. It may be time for you to pivot. It may be time for you to double down if you know that that thing is what you're supposed to be doing. So now I want to talk about what's coming. Here are a few initiatives that we're actively building now in this quarter. We're going to start producing some of the email content in audio form. So think of it as the best of email series in a podcast. And so like the This Content, the Work-Life Balance series, the Engineers Are People Too, all of those things in some shape or form are going to come into audio. I can't wait for you to respond to that, to see what your thoughts are. So we're going to be using AI to either dramatize those emails or to read those emails out. And we're going to build segments around that. The template for those episodes, we're still working that out, and we'll probably do a few different templates so that we can see what may work best. The second thing is that the weekly emails that I send, they're actually going to be growing up. So what do I mean? So if you have been on the list for a while, you might be thinking that the emails are fine. You just got finished talking about that the emails were doing fine. But here's the change. And again, it goes back to build tight plans, but hold them loosely. The goal here is to create a brandable asset, something that people will want to share with their network, something that's easy to pass along to a colleague or a friend who needs it. And so that means that it has to be something that's easily portable, easily explainable, something that you can look at it, know exactly what it is, and then you can share it. So the email is growing into the newsletter, and the newsletter is called Win by Design. Because here's the reality. You don't just win by accident. You don't win just by grinding harder or hoping that something changes. You win by design, by being intentional about what matters, about how you lead, about how you live. Win by Design will officially launch in June, but in the meantime, if you're on the list, you're already getting that content. And if you're not on the list, the link is going to be in the show notes. Third, and this one is something I'm really excited about. I mentioned earlier that I read every email reply that I receive, everyone. And earlier this year, when I sent the series on the myth of work-life balance, the responses that I got back were extraordinary. Personal stories, real situations, engineers navigating this exact tension in their careers and in their homes. So we're going to build episodes around those responses. Again, we're going to bring that content to life in the podcast because this is not just my platform. It's your platform. We have built this together over the past 5 years, and I want you to hear yourselves in it. And now the update that a lot of you have been asking about, and that is the book. The second draft of the manuscript of the book, we are working on that. We're in the revision process right now, working through it carefully, making sure that every story connects, making sure that there are no loose threads. This is the most work that I've put into anything that I've ever created. The book is called The Engineer's Blueprint for Success, Stop Balancing and Start Winning. It's built around a character whose name is Marcus. He's a senior structural engineer carrying 5 projects when he can really only lead 3 well. He's missing most of his family evenings and running completely on empty. He's not showing up fully at home. He's not showing up fully at work either. He feels like he needs help in both areas. Does that sound familiar? So Marcus is a composite of a lot of high achieving engineers that I've coached over the years. And his story runs through the entire book because I didn't want to just tell you what to do. I wanted you to be in the room when the real work happens. So the book is a mixture of narration and frameworks. And so you're going to be in the coaching sessions when I'm working with Marcus. You'll see where he resists. You'll watch what shifts when he pushes through. So the book is built around the 4 steps of the engineer's blueprint for success. Decide what matters most, visualize your integrated life, design the plan, and then execute that plan consistently. And again, if you've been around long enough, you'll recognize these 4 steps of the engineer's blueprint for success. It reads like a story, but it works like a system, and I will keep you posted right here. One more thing before we close. I've been making a deliberate effort to get out of my home office and into the community, connecting with leaders here in the Richmond, Virginia area, engineering firms, technical professionals, and consultants. Some of those conversations are going to be coming to the podcast. I'm doing a special mini series on RVA leadership. In fact, the next 2 episodes after this one are going to fit in that series. And so we're going to talk with those leaders right here in the area. And I think you're going to enjoy them. And this, again, may become a template where we can come to your area and do local leadership series as well. As we come to a close to today's episode, now it's time to flip the mic, where you become the interviewer and I become the interviewee. What's one question that you have for me? Now, I know you can't ask the question in real time, but here's what you can do. Use the link in the show notes and you can go to a survey form where you can ask James anything. Now, in this survey, you can either verbally give your answer or you can type in your answers. If you want to receive a personal response, include your name and your email, but that's optional. Again, you can use that link in the show notes. Go to Ask James Anything, and you can ask your one question, and you never know, that question might end up on the show. We just finished up the first quarter of 2026, and this is the time of year where a lot of leaders do one of 2 things. They either celebrate the wins that they can't fully explain, or they're frustrated by results they can't fully diagnose. And in both cases, the problem is usually the same. They never define what winning looked like. Here at Engineer Your Success, I can tell you exactly what mattered to me in this first quarter: engagement and interactivity. You were responding and you were showing up. You provided feedback to let me know that the coach in your corner and the mic flip segments were landing in a way that they were designed to do. Here's the thing that I want you to kind of take away. Most management principals that I work with are incredibly disciplined about KPIs for their projects and for their firms. Utilization rates, revenue targets, client satisfaction, they track it all, or they have systems in place that track it all. But when I ask them, what were your KPIs for yourself as a leader for this quarter, the room gets quiet. You cannot course correct what you've never defined, and you have no options, none, if you never decide what success looked like in the first place. So here's one action I want you to take before Q2 gets too far ahead of you. Write down 3 things that would make this quarter a win for you, not just for your firm, for you as a leader. Maybe it's finally having that communication conversation with your team that you've been putting off. Maybe it's getting your senior staff in the room and actually working through how they're talking to each other and to their clients. Maybe it's a decision you've been avoiding or a habit that you've been meaning to build. So again, 3 things defined, written down so that you can measure by the end of June. This is one of the things that you can do to help you consistently engineer your success so that you can win at work and at home. Hey, I want to thank you for spending time with me today. If you have not signed up for the Win by Design newsletter yet, the link is in the show notes. The official launch is coming in June, but you can start getting the weekly leadership content in your inbox right now while you wait. And if this episode meant something to you, share it with one engineer in your life who needs to hear it. Until next time, keep winning by design.